¿Qué pasaría si te dijera que el mismísimo vicepresidente de Estados Unidos acaba de tirar por la borda la versión oficial sobre los archivos de Epstein y lo hizo con una charla casual con un comediante? No es una teoría conspirativa, no es un sketch de Saturday Night Live, no es una escena eliminada de House of Cards. Es Estados Unidos en el año 2025 donde la verdad parece estar secuestrada y lo más grave, está secuestrada por los mismos que juraron protegerla. Hoy te voy a contar cómo la fachada de Donald Trump se está cayendo a pedazos, cómo el Senado se convirtió en su escudo personal y cómo Pam Bondi está liderando una cruzada institucional no por justicia, sino para proteger a una abogada fiel. No por justicia, sino para proteger a alguien. Suscríbete ahora mismo porque si no lo contamos nosotros, nadie más lo va a hacer.
They're eating the dogs. Sleepy, crooked Joe Biden.
I really don't know what he said.
Empecemos con esto. J.D. Vance, actual vicepresidente de los Estados Unidos, tiene una conversación informal con un comediante llamado Tom Dillon. Sí, con un comediante, no con un fiscal, no con un periodista de investigación, con un tipo que frecuenta programas como el de Alex Jones. Y ahí Vance le suelta que los famosos archivos de Jeffrey Epstein no prueban una red de trata, sino que eran simplemente para uso personal. Ese comentario, dicho en privado pero luego revelado públicamente por Dillon, no es menor. Rompe, destruye, dinamita la justificación oficial de Donald Trump para mantener todo oculto. Donald Trump siempre alegó que se trataba de una investigación en curso, de redes de trata internacionales, de proteger a las víctimas. Pero si lo que dice Vance es cierto, entonces la excusa desaparece como las promesas de campaña tras las elecciones. Pregunta clave. ¿Están encubriendo algo o simplemente ya no pueden sostener más sus propias mentiras? Pasamos al Senado de los Estados Unidos, un lugar que, en teoría, debería ser el templo de la rendición de cuentas. El senador demócrata Rubén Gallego, con un planteamiento básico, lógico, sensato, incluso inocente, dice lo obvio. Liberemos los archivos de Epstein. Si no hay nada que ocultar, hagámoslo público. Y ahí aparece el senador republicano Mark Wayne Mullin, fanático MAGA, y responde: lo que simplemente queremos hacer aquí es protegerlo a él.
And call the Justice Department to release these files. It is that simple. If there's nothing to hide, then come out and prove it.
I'm sure this would be handled just like any other thing that they've tried to go after, like the baseless impeachments or the baseless special counsels or the unbelievable amount of charges they've tried to file against the president. I'm sure this would be handled the exact same way. What we're simply wanting to do here is give them cover. So if my colleague from Arizona actually wants transparency, then he would drop his objection to my...
¿Perdón? ¿Proteger a quién? Sí, lo dijo así, frente al micrófono en el Capitolio, y fue transmitido en vivo por el canal oficial del Senado. No es rumor, no es sospecha, es una admisión en tiempo real. No buscan justicia, buscan encubrir a Trump. Y mientras tanto, las víctimas de Epstein, sus familias y la sociedad entera siguen esperando que la verdad vea la luz. Pero aquí no termina la cosa. Donald Trump, como siempre, saca su manual de defensa versión cortina de humo. No podemos liberar los videos de Epstein porque contienen pornografía y están relacionados con una investigación por trata de personas. Pam Bondi, por supuesto, hace eco inmediato de esa excusa. Pero adivina quién vuelve a aparecer. J.D. Vance, y vuelve a soltar otra bomba. Según lo que dijo Dillon, no hay red criminal, no hay operación internacional, solo un enfermo con una colección privada. Entonces, ¿cuál es la verdadera razón para ocultar los archivos? La respuesta está frente a nuestros ojos. No están protegiendo a las víctimas, están protegiendo nombres. Nombres con poder, nombres que asustan. Aquí entramos al terreno más delicado. ¿Qué está haciendo J.D. Vance? ¿Fue un desliz? ¿Fue una filtración calculada? ¿O simplemente un momento de honestidad no planeado? Porque desde que soltó esa información se nota que lo tienen alejado del círculo íntimo de Donald Trump como si ya no fuera confiable. ¿Es un soplón accidental o es alguien que, sin querer queriendo, dejó la verdad salir por su boca así? Déjame en los comentarios, porque si algo está claro, es que esta revelación lo cambia todo. Ahora hablemos de Pam Bondi, la fiscal general que se comporta como si fuera guardaespaldas de Donald Trump. Hace unos días Bondi despidió a la fiscal federal interina de Nueva Jersey, Desiree LeGrace. ¿Por qué? Porque no era Alina Habba. Sí, Alina Habba, la abogada que se ha hecho famosa por perder todos sus casos, había sido puesta como fiscal interina. Pero cuando la corte del distrito decide legalmente reemplazarla por Grace, Bondi entra en modo emperatriz romana. Llama a los jueces rebeldes, despide a Grace y deja a todo un estado sin fiscal federal, sin ley, sin rumbo, y todo por lealtad a Donald Trump. Hoy, Nueva Jersey, un estado clave con miles de casos federales abiertos, no tiene fiscal, no porque no haya candidato, sino porque la administración Trump prefiere bloquear todo antes que soltar el control. La corte nombra a alguien, Bondi la despide, la corte insiste, Bondi contraataca. Es un juego sin fin. Un juego en el que la justicia es la primera víctima y todo para proteger a los suyos. Lo que acabas de escuchar no es solo un escándalo aislado, es un patrón, un mecanismo, un sistema de encubrimiento tan descarado que ya ni se esfuerza en disimular. Desde el vicepresidente que filtra verdades incómodas hasta senadores que confiesan que están para proteger al líder, pasando por fiscales despedidas por no pertenecer al culto de la lealtad. Esto no es política, esto es abuso de poder institucionalizado. Y ahora toca a ti, ¿crees que J.D. Vance simplemente metió la pata o fue el primer gran nombre en abrir las grietas del muro de mentiras que rodea a Donald Trump? Déjalo en los comentarios. Y si te parece que este contenido merece ser escuchado, no lo dudes. Suscríbete, dale like y comparte este video porque mientras otros miran hacia otro lado, nosotros seguimos mostrando la jugada completa. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Chao, chao.
My colleague from Oklahoma refused to join me in calling on the DOJ to release all the Epstein files. Instead, he offered his own resolution calling on the courts to unseal the records. When asked if we did both, which I am asking to do both, I want to call for transparency, and of course we could ask the Justice Department and the courts. He's also going to object. Republicans are demanding the courts be transparent, but aren't willing to ask the same thing of the Trump DOJ. This is the height of hypocrisy. They want to tell the courts to be transparent, but aren't willing for themselves to be transparent. This is for the second time in 1 week the Senate had the chance to demand transparency and stand up for the truth. Instead, my colleagues chose to protect, again, the powerful elites. If there's truly nothing to hide in those files, then what are they so afraid of? What are they hiding? Why the panic? Why the backpedaling? And why all the objections? Congress should work for the people, not the powerful elites, and definitely not for one man or one administration. Today's resolution should have made that clear. Therefore, I ask the consent that the consent request be modified such that my resolution, SR 325, be discharged from the Committee on the Judiciary. Further, that the Senate proceed to the en bloc consideration of SR 335 and SR 325, that the resolutions be agreed to, that the preamble be agreed to, and the motions to be reconsidered be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate, all en bloc.
Is there objection to the modification?
I reserve the right to object.
Senator from Oklahoma is recognized.
It's interesting that my colleague wants to continue talking about the elites, but the elites was the ones that actually covered up the last 4 years of the Biden administration. I mean, think about what happened during the Biden administration. They covered up, 1, for his cognitive behavior. 2, they covered up the Hunter Biden laptop. 3, they covered up the Russian gate and continue to cover up the Russian gate. And 4, they covered up the fact that an auto bin signed every one of his papers except one. Where was the cover-up? Where did the elites come from? Well, it's because of the pressure from the Biden administration that actually did put it on the elite, on all the social media outlets. It's interesting, when I started talking to social media's founders after President Trump was elected, they said, we feel like we can actually do our job again. Why? Because the DOJ wasn't threatening to sue them. The Biden administration wasn't threatening to blackmail them. But yet my colleague from Arizona is saying that we're covering up for the elites. let's be honest. We know these files have been out there forever. I don't remember a single time the Biden administration called on these things to be released. And I definitely don't remember my colleague from Arizona calling on these files to be released. As I've said before, this is nothing more than political theater. Everybody sees it. The American people sees it. And what else can President Trump and AG Bondi do but call on the judges to release the information? We're simply going back and forth here saying the same thing. The difference between my resolution and my colleagues from Arizona's resolution is mine isn't blurring the boundaries between separation of power. Mine is simply calling upon the judges to release the information. What my colleague's resolution does is truly trying to tell the FBI and the DOJ how they can proceed in doing their job and how they can actually present the information. Basically saying that we want all that information to go through Congress. Well, I'm sure Congress has never once played politics with any information. I'm sure that this investigation will be handled much like other investigations into this administration that the Democrats have done over the last, 8 years. I'm sure this will be handled just like any other thing that they've tried to go after, like the baseless impeachments or the baseless special counsels or the unbelievable amount of charges they've tried to file against the president. I'm sure this would be handled the exact same way. What we're simply wanting to do here is give them cover. So if my colleague from Arizona actually wants transparency, then he would drop his objection to my resolution and just simply have mine go through, and we can move forward with the transparency that maybe both of us actually want. So therefore, I object to combining them. I would ask my colleague once again to accept my resolution.
The objection is heard to the modification. Is there objection to the original request?
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. Let's just understand
New
why
Mexico
we're
is
here.
recognized.
Let's just understand why we're here. The political theater was started more than 8 years ago. Political theater started just 5 months ago when the president said, after appointing his attorney general, that they're going to release the Epstein files. When the attorney general said, I have those files right here, I'm going to show them to you. And then all of a sudden, the shenanigans started. All of a sudden, the files are gone. They're not there. They're made up by somebody else. That's where this political theater is coming from. And the American public wants to know why. Why, after 8 years, this president promising that I will release the files, why, after 8 years, getting into the office and then appointing his attorney general and then directing his attorney general to go look for those Epstein files, and then that attorney general saying they're going to release Epstein files, and then poof, all of a sudden there's an issue. All of a sudden there's backpedaling. This is what stinks for the American public. This is what smells like an elite cover-up. That's what we're trying to get to. And if my good colleague from Oklahoma agreed with me, then we would do both, because that is what is demanded by the American public. Because the first promise was made by this president that they were going to release the files. That is where it's political started. So with that, Mr. Chair, I object to the good senator from Oklahoma's motion, and I yield back.
The objection is heard. Senator from Oklahoma is recognized.
In closing, I would just simply say, well, maybe my colleague from Arizona and I can work together if he wants to, and we can drop some of the stuff in his resolution. Maybe we can come up with a conclusion with my resolution, where I have concerns about yours, blurring the lines between the separation of powers, and at the same time wanting transparency. If we can both agree we want transparency, then we've worked together on several issues in the past. Let's sit down and try working this one out. With that, I yield back.